All right, welcome everyone. We have a number of pieces of legislation we'll be going over today. First, we'll discuss some bills that improve transparency and public access to information. Intro 648A requires landlords to post a record of bedbug infestations in their buildings and to provide any tenant signing a lease with bedbug history. Intro 891A gives businesses the option to be informed by text or email if they receive a 311 complaint. And Intro 1311A requires DOT to notify the NYPD and FDNY about the resurfacing of any roads. I want to thank Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito, Councilmember Jumani Williams, Chair of the Housing and Buildings Committee, HPD Commissioner Maria Torres Springer, SBS Commissioner Greg Bishop, DUIT Commissioner Ann Roast, DOT Commissioner Polly Trottenberg, and now it's my pleasure to introduce the sponsor of Intro 648A, Councilmember Danny Drum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bed bugs are a vexing problem for tenants throughout the city, and I thank you for recognizing the enormous disruption caused by these unwelcome little visitors. The best weapon we have against bed bugs is knowledge. The more apartment tenants and owners know, the better prepared they will be to take prophylactic measures and detect any burgeoning infestations. In 2010, the state legislature passed and the governor signed the New York City Bed Bug Disclosure Act. This was a welcome step forward, but it impacted only vacancy leases. While incoming tenants should now receive a disclosure of a property's bed bug infestation history, existing tenants are left in the dark. This legislation will fill this gap by requiring disclosure to all tenants through postings or individual notices with leases, as well as information on the prevention, detection, and removal of bed bugs. Finally, building owners will be required to report to the Department of Housing Preservation and Development on infestations and eradication measures. I want to reassure landlords there is no need to bug out since they are already disclosing to new tenants. This bill will simply extend that transparency to all tenants. Bed bugs, after all, do not distinguish between new and longtime tenants. They're just out for blood. I would like to thank the Speaker, the Housing and Buildings Chair, Jumani Williams, and legislative staff, Megan Chen and Jen Wilcox, for all their work on Intro 648A. And I'd also like to thank my counsel, Sebastian McGuire, for his work on this.
Councilmember Drum is having too much fun with his remarks today. Very good. Bug out. Excellent.
I was going to wear a costume, but
that would have been impressive. Now, my pleasure to introduce the sponsor of Intro 891A and the chair of the Small Business Committee, Councilmember Robert Cornegy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today marks the end of a long road traveled. When I first became chair of the Committee on Small Business, I set a goal to leave the small businesses of our great city in a better place than when I started. It's my belief that Intro 891 begins that process. The original intent of this bill was to assist bars and restaurants that receive 311 noise complaints by informing their owners of any complaints made against their establishments before they sought renewal of their liquor licenses. After spending time consulting with other business owners throughout our city, I quickly realized that this service would benefit an even wider variety of businesses, many of which have become frustrated with the city's open data portal. As it will be enacted today, Intro 891 will require the Department of Information Technology and Telecommunications to create a push notification system whereby business owners are informed of any complaints lodged against them within 72 hours. Participation is voluntary and notification can be received via text message or email. I believe this bill solves a 20th century problem with a 21st century solution. Owners should not have to spend their time searching for complaints filed against their businesses. In an age when push notifications by text message and email have become a common business practice, it is important for our city to keep pace and alert business owners of complaints filed against their businesses. Intro 891 will give them an opportunity to address, or at the very least, be made aware of potential issues they have in their communities. I'd like to thank Mayor Bill de Blasio, Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito, my council colleagues, Tirza Nasser, Asia Schomburg, Nicole Bean, Michael Kurtz, Rob Newman, and my staff for their efforts in helping usher this bill into law.
Thank you very much. Now, my pleasure to introduce the sponsor of Intro 1311A, Councilmember Chaim Deutsch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When an emergency vehicle is responding to a 911 call, every second counts. Often when rushing to a fire, a crime in progress, or an injury, our first responders can get caught up in an unexpected traffic jam or redirected because roads are closed for street repair. My intro, Bill 1311, will address this problem by mandating the Department of Transportation to notify the NYPD and the FDNY 2 days in advance of street closure. This will provide sufficient advance notice to firefighters, EMTs, and police officers who can then ensure that they avoid areas with street closures while responding to calls. When each passing minute can mean a difference between life and death for the people waiting for their arrival, it is vital that these emergency providers are well informed about closed streets and uncommon congestion in their area. I want to thank Speaker Melissa Margarito and Transportation Chair Ydanis Rodriguez for their support of Intro 1311, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilman. I also want to thank, even though he couldn't be here, the Chair of the Transportation Committee, Councilmember Ydanis Rodriguez, for his support. We have one person signed up for public testimony. Yoselin Estrella, please come up.
Good afternoon. No one should worry about whether their rented apartment may have a history of bedbug infestation. However, this is exactly what thousands of residents have been destroyed over. Today's law will provide peace of mind by providing more transparency, equity, and dignity for all New Yorkers, especially low to moderate income. My name is Jocelyn Henao Estrella, and I am Secretary Director of Neighborhood Housing Services of Queens CDC, a nonprofit organization that provides the tools for low to moderate income New Yorkers be able to buy, keep, and maintain their homes. Our endeavor is guided by the local needs for safe, clean, and adequate housing for all. Intro 648 would ensure greater transparency and more information to all tenants. We thank Mayor de Blasio, all the council members, especially Councilmember Drum, for their support in the fight to keep healthier, safer homes for all New Yorkers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, let's gather around and sign some bills here. Councilmember Drum, you are first. All right, 5. Last one? Yeah. Now, Councilmember Cornegie.
I think I have this right. I shake hands first, and then I take the pen.
Yes, you are right about after I sign. Oh. So first I sign, then we hit it. Then we get it. It's all good. How many are we doing? First we have. Well done. We're learning together. See, that's good. That's good. You have other wonderful skills. We have only height. Okay. How many more? 4. Well done. You got it. We can do another one if you need. I'll give you another. I need, here, let's do one of those too. Excellent. These bills are now law. Congratulations. Well done. Oh, thank you so much. I used you as my North Star when I was looking out in the crowd.
It's funny because everybody's like, you should just stand up front. I'm like, get here on time this morning.
I don't know why I was sitting.
Wise man.
Someone told
Thanks for your
me
help.
to sit there.
You are Helen Rosenthal.
I
You sit
don't-
wherever you
It was
like.
a misseating.
A misseating?
Oh, I want to sit on the other side though.
Wherever you like.
Don't take it personally.
I was gonna say, where's our balance?
I know, I'm moving over here.
Come closer.
I'm the only woman here.
One get,
Proximity matters.
proximity's good, very nice tie.
Thank
Like
you.
that sharp tie.
Thank you.
Trade speaking.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. All right, excuse me. Now, we will discuss bills that help make this, excuse me, a more equitable and accessible city. Intro 965A requires DOT to create a citywide transit study, in particular focusing on how to bring increased transit to underserved communities. Intro 1254A requires that information about college savings plans be sent home with pre-K students, and requires DOHMH to send this information to families within 3 months of a child's birth. I want to thank Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito, Chancellor Carmen Farina, DOE, Health Commissioner Dr. Mary Bassett, the sponsor of Intro 1254A, Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams, Chair of the Education Committee, Danny Drum, Chair of Transportation Committee, Edonis Rodriguez. We thank them all. Now my pleasure to introduce the sponsor of Intro 1254A, Councilmember Mark Trader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, and thank you to Mayor de Blasio and my colleagues. I'm excited to be here today and see a great bill signed into law. I introduced this legislation in partnership with Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams because I recognize the growing need to help new parents save for their child's post-secondary education. This law will raise awareness of New York's 529 College Savings Program and other college savings plans and financial literacy resources. As you may know, the 529 College Savings Program is a flexible investment tool that assists parents in saving for their child's post-secondary education, whether their child attends a 4-year college, a 2-year college, a trade school, or any other postgraduate degree. This program offers participants up to an annual $10,000 tax deduction. Tax-free withdrawals from the account can be used for tuition, books, supplies, electronics, or room and board. This program provides significant assistance for parents who may otherwise struggle to pay for the rising cost of post-secondary education. Many students already receive college savings plans materials in school as a result of great legislation passed last term, sponsored by Councilmember Andy King. This law expands this distribution of information on college savings plans to include pre-kindergarten students, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for championing UPK, and adds additional information on the costs and scholarships available for our CUNY and SUNY schools, as well as other financial planning resources. In addition, the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene will now be required to provide substantially similar information to new parents within 3 months of their child's birth to ensure that all parents are able to receive this important information that will help their plan for their children's futures. This legislation makes this information available in a number of different languages. As a former educator, I believe strongly that every child deserves the opportunity to pursue education after high school. For young people looking to forge their own career path, to find high-paying jobs with career mobility, it has never been more important to possess more than just a high school diploma. Yet these educational opportunities have never been more expensive than they are today. There are a number of people I want to thank for this bill. Of course, I want to thank again my co-sponsor, Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams, for his partnership, as well as his staff, Ryan Lynch and Sandra Chapman. I want to thank the mayor, John Paul Lupo, Rick Rodriguez, and Charlie Adenoff for their willingness to find compromise and creative solutions to ensure that more parents will get this information. I want to thank the speaker, Ramon Martinez, Laura Popa, Rob Newman, Matt Gawab, and of course, Gary Altman for their assistance in moving this bill through the process. I want to thank Chair Danny Drum of the Education Committee. I want to thank Councilmember Andy King. I want to thank Asia Schomburg, Smita Deshmukh, Sylvester Yavana for their work in crafting this bill, and of course my own staff, Anna Scaife, Ethan Lustig, and Eric Feinberg. I also want to just acknowledge very quickly that in the audience we have a young, talented, amazing future council member, Jason Alicia, a talented and bright young man from the Bronx who is shadowing me today. And last but not least, I want to thank the advocates for their valuable feedback and insight. This is a great step forward for New York. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. You are a thankful person. I appreciate that. That's a good thing to be. We have now been joined by the Chair of the Transportation Committee and the sponsor of Intro 965A, Councilmember Adonis Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor, and 1, 2, 3 test. It's working? Okay.
There you go.
So, no doubt that in your leadership, we've been addressing transportation desert more than ever in our city. However, we both understand, the mayor, the speaker, and all of us, that we still have transportation deserts in many areas where we are committed to address. And there's many ideas, like the water taxi, expanding water taxi to the light rail, among many other ideas that we know that we had to discuss as a city to connect individuals to our public transit is important. This legislation is calling for us to empower DOT to do the study on the transit in New York City so that we can look at areas such as in the South Bronx, in Queens, that people, they had to be walking 10, 15 blocks to take a train. And how do we connect? How do we provide better opportunity for a teacher who say, if I can be hired in one of those schools, I would take as a top priority because I have access to that school. So with this initiative, again, I think that we're working together with DOT. We will see the study going on, and at the end of the day, we should be able to have a plan on how we address transportation desert that still is affecting many New Yorkers. And it's still one of those areas of inequality. When working class, they don't have access to a train or a bus, they will be affected. And I know that the commitment is there in your leadership, and we are more than happy to keep working together with you.
Excellent. All right, since there's no public testimony on this legislation, let's gather around for the signing. Okay. Councilman Trigger, how many would you like? Five. And are you taking them for Eric Adams, or are you giving it to him?
If there's 9 available.
We can do it.
We could do it.
Who's got Eric Adams? Okay. Nine total it is, and the first one goes to you, and I think.
Thank you, Mr. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, how many do you get of these, Joan? How are you? I hear you're a future councilman. That's what they're saying. You're learning from a smart man, so pay attention closely. And this would be the last. You good with that? Excellent. And now we have Councilman Rodriguez. There you go. How many do you need? Wait, these are yours, Johnny, for the first one? Let's get those out of the way. 5, okay. Whoa. Congratulations. These bills are now law. Congratulations.
It's my idea first. Yes, it was. You can say it was your idea.
Okay, here we go. Now, We'll discuss bills involving the web portal used by vendors who do business with the City of New York. VENDEX, the Vendor Information Exchange System, is where vendors fill out, submit, and track the progress of applications they make to the city. Intro 1224A increases the type of contracts that require vendors to respond to questionnaires. This will provide vital information to help us award contracts more equitably. Intro 1271A requires vendors to submit information to VENDEX digitally. Intro 1324A requires MOCs to post information about City of New York contracts and contractors online. This will help us increase transparency. I want to thank Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito, Director Michael O. of the Mayor's Office of Contract Services, Councilmember Brad Lander, the sponsor of Intro 1324A, and now my pleasure to introduce the Chair of the Committee on Contracts and sponsor of Intros 1224A and 1271A, Councilmember Helen Rosenthal.
Thanks so much, Mayor de Blasio. Is this working? Yeah?
This has to
Thank
be-
you. You know, if we're ever going to ensure that minority and women-owned businesses get their fair share, if we're ever going to eliminate waste from city contracts, if we're ever going to make it easy and desirable to do business with the city, we have to get into the weeds of procurement.
True.
These bills will make it easier for us to spend taxpayer money wisely and responsibly. And I'm proud as Chair of the Contracts Committee to nerd out on these bills. Intro 1271A will require vendors to fill out their VENDEX procurement questionnaire online. The current paper submission system isn't just a relic of the 1980s. Its inefficiencies make it harder for small businesses and nonprofits to do the work that the city relies on. I heard of a small nonprofit that had to submit the same sheet of paper 3 times in a row, only to see it lost in processing all 3 times. And all the while, that nonprofit was waiting to be paid for the services that they were doing at that time. Moving forward, an all-digital procurement process will make it easier for organizations to do business with the city. And let's face it, even when we streamline the process, the VENDEX questionnaire is always going to be a hurdle, especially for smaller organizations. Intro 1224A raises the awards threshold for companies and nonprofits required to fill out the VENDEX questionnaire from $100,000 to $250,000, which your director calls the sweet spot. By exempting contracts under $250,000 from the process, we will save hundreds of organizations time and money. Procurement reform is never going to be the sexiest issue, but we have to get procurement right if we want to have a chance to get anything else right. I want to thank my fellow procurement nerd, Michael O., Director of the Mayor's Office of Contract Services. It's been great working with this administration, which has committed itself to tackling these issues head on. I also want to thank my committee counsels on the bills, first Eric Bernstein and now Alex Polinoff, Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito, of course you, Mayor de Blasio, and my wonderful staff, Sarah Crean and Sean Fitzpatrick. Thank you.
Well done. You made procurement interesting.
I said I would, and I did.
And you did it. Excellent. And now the sponsor of Intro 1324A, Councilmember Brad Lander.
Thank you. Thank you.
I know it's hard, right?
Yeah, we have lights on
Yeah,
ours.
it's
That's
on
makes
either
it
way. That's
more-
the trick. Whatever you do, it's still on.
Well, they're always recording. We
Yeah,
know that.
that's right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Chair Rosenthal, for including my bill in this exciting procurement package. This bill will allow people to get VENDEX and contract information that is available to the public online, rather than having to go just down to the Manhattan office of the Mayor's Office of Contract Services to see it there. I don't know that they're beating a path to the door of the MOC's office, but we want online and digital contracting in VENDEX. partly to make it easier for contractors, partly to streamline, partly to make it easy for the city, and partly for the values of transparency as well. We all do better when members of the public, members of the council, members of the media have access to information, can help make sure things are on the up and up. We all do better when those kinds of things are out in the light of day. And this bill helps take us in that direction, and I'm grateful to have it included in this package.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. Let's now sign these bills.
Why, thank you.
You are first, Councilmember.
Thank you.
How many would you like? You have, for each bill, you have 2.
2 more, 5, 6 in total.
6 between the 2 bills?
Yes, please.
It shall happen.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Well done. You are legislatively productive. Not everyone in the world can say that.
No, it's easy when I'm working with the administration and getting work done.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
First, now,
Hey, you guys, come on up. Brian, Annie, you made this happen.
is this your shy staff? It's our shy staff? Wow, they're so shy, I didn't know.
Really good things for you guys.
Mom, what's your name? Ryan. Ryan. Come on over.
They are making people want to do business with the city.
Amen.
Thank you.
I think do you want one more? Do you want this or more of this? I'm gonna give you this one more. There.
Thank you so much.
There you go, boss.
Thank you.
Okay, and now Councilmember Lander. Okay, how many would you like?
Two for transparency.
Thank you. Done. Good job.
We put all the bills on too.
You live by your creed. All right, well done. These bills are now law. Congratulations. You're,
Sorry,
come on in.
mother.
There we go. Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Well done, everyone. Like ballet. Okay. Finally.
I was going to be a gentleman.
Okay. Finally, we will discuss bills that increase safety on construction sites. Intro 81A requires Department of Buildings to notify OSHA about building code violations that may endanger workers. Intro 1433A requires Department of Buildings to post online all construction site incidents that result in a death or injury. Intro 1448A requires major construction projects at buildings of more than 3 stories to retain a construction superintendent to monitor safety. Intro 1421A requires certain types of complex cranes to have GPS or other locating devices, or for DOB to be notified when these cranes are moved on or off a work site. Intro 1435A requires certain cranes to be equipped with data logging equipment to record operations and work conditions. And Intro 1446A requires Class B hoisting machine operators to get a license rating to use cranes with a long boom or jib configuration. I want to thank Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito, our Buildings Commissioner Rick Chandler, the Chair of the Housing and Buildings Committee, Councilmember Jamani Williams, and now it's my pleasure to introduce the sponsor of Intro 1421A, Councilmember Margaret Chin.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon. I'm Councilmember Margaret Chin, the proud sponsor of Intro 1421A. When signed into law, this bill requires certain cranes to be equipped with global position system. It's hard to forget the devastating impact that the 2016 crane collapse had on the communities in Lower Manhattan. On that day, we lost David Wicks, a devoted husband, a beloved community member, and a New Yorker. Since that day, residents in my district are a little wearier whenever they see a crane erected near their home or at workplace. Intro 1421A is a good first step to restore every New Yorker's faith in government's oversight over the unprecedented constructions happening in our neighborhoods. GPS technology will allow Department of Buildings to easily locate mobile cranes for real-time audits while accepting certain cranes that are not mobile. By signing Intro 421A into law, we are elevating safety standards to a level that residents, visitors, and workers deserve. I thank you, Mayor, for working with me and the rest of the council and signing this bill today. I also want to thank our Speaker, Melissa Mark-Viverito, and Housing Building Chair, Councilmember Jumaane Williams, for their leadership on this legislation. And lastly, I want to thank Housing and Building staff, Megan Chan, Jan Wilcox, and Guillermo Patino, and my Deputy Chief of Staff, Vincent Fang, for their hard work on 1421A. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. Now, my pleasure to introduce the sponsor of Intro 1433A, Councilmember Ben Kalos.
Thank you, Mayor. How many more construction workers must die as a result of a preventable injury? When construction deaths in New York City reached a high of 33 in just the last 2 years, the New York City Council undertook a comprehensive legislative review process to determine where we can help prevent the losses of life. A problem I came across when we were researching this was the lack of a clear, comprehensive data that hindered our ability to accurately measure the problem, and going forward would threaten the city's ability to implement solutions. The Federal Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, and Department of Buildings, DOB, count injuries and deaths on construction sites in different ways. We're signing Introduction 1433 today to count every injury and every death. Every injury must be counted. Every death must be counted. Under legislation, every death, every injury will be reported on a timely basis, regardless of whether or not it was a violation of OSHA or DOB, regardless of whether it's a construction worker or a member of the public. Their lives will be counted. When someone gets hurt or dies, that will trigger reporting to the public within 72 hours that will tell us who the contractors are, details on the incident, work being done, hours on the job, the types of injuries, who was hurt, whether a construction worker had a collective bargaining unit, details about the construction site, and so much more. And at the suggestion of the Department of Buildings, the construction companies that don't report and hide the truth will face fines of as much as $25,000 and daily fines as much as $1,000. I'd like to thank Mayor de Blasio, Speaker Melissa Mark-Viverito, and Housing and Buildings Chair Jumaane Williams for their dedication to ensuring that our construction workers, as well as those living, working, or just passing by construction sites, are safer. I also want to thank the legislative staff and my policy director, Paul Westrick. Through this legislation, we'll be able to see who's getting hurt, where, when, and why, so that we as a city can help make construction safer. We must count every life.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Now, my pleasure to introduce the sponsor of Intro 1435A, Councilmember Alan Maisel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This bill would require event recorders on cranes, represents one of the recommendations for the Crane Technical Working Group, formed shortly after the crane collapse in Tribeca. It is vital that as we experience an increase in construction, we also make a commitment to increasing the safety of all construction sites. Event recorders will be able to capture information that may lead to a crane accident, such as a crane overload conditions, and operator overrides of crane functions. The tracking of these conditions may give investigators greater insight into the possible causes of future crane accidents. I would like to thank the Mayor and Speaker Melissa Mark-Viverito, Jumaane Williams, Chairman of the Housing and Buildings Committee, for their leadership on this issue, and the staff of the Housing and Buildings Committee and my staff in my council office. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now the aforementioned Chair of the Housing and Buildings Committee and sponsor of Intros 1446A and 1448A, Councilmember Jumaane Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today, we're here to sign Intro 1446 and Intro 1448, which are part of a larger package of 21 bills on construction safety. Intro 1446 requires hoisting machine operators to obtain a special rating in order to operate particularly large cranes. And 1448 requires buildings under 10 stories, excluding 1, 2, and 3 family buildings, to retain a construction superintendent to maintain a safe job site. We know there have been 33 deaths within the past 2 years. And I have said, I think a lot of us in city government waited a little too long. We failed those workers. But we are catching up now, and I'm very proud of that. I want to thank the mayor and Commissioner Chandler, who increasingly are accepting of DOB having to take a much larger role in doing this. And these bills are part of a package that we put together, which is the largest package that the council has ever heard at one time, show how much we really value these lives and know how important this issue is. Regardless if you're union or non-union, we want to make sure that everyone leaves their home to feed their families and comes back the same way. And we reject the fact that there is a construction boom means that there has to be loss of life in this manner. I believe these two bills are helping us move in the right direction to minimize harm. And these bills are for workers who didn't make it home after a day on the job site. My hope is that with this due diligence and oversight, we can prevent one more family from losing a loved one. Again, I want to thank the mayor and Commissioner Chandler, all of my colleagues, Megan Chen, Guillermo Patino, Jose Conde, Sarah Gastelum from the housing staff, housing committee staff, Laura Popa, Matt Gowab, Ed Atkin, Jeff Baker from central staff, Mike Toomey from my staff. There's a gentleman we don't mention that much in my office, but his name is Nick Smith. And he was transplanted, I don't know if it's to greener pastures, but to different pastures in the mayor's office, and we want to say thank you to him as well.
Excellent. And now the sponsor of Intro 81A, Councilmember Rory Lansman.
Thank you. Good afternoon. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, is the primary agency in the United States responsible for ensuring a safe workplace. And currently, there's no obligation on the part of the City Department of Buildings to inform OSHA when DOB learns of a violation that is potentially hazardous to workers. The OSHA Notification Act would help protect construction workers at unsafe work sites by requiring the Department of Buildings to report immediately hazardous or major violations of the building code that deals with safety during construction and demolition, and any violation of OSHA training requirements. Over the past 2 years, as has been observed, over 30 construction workers have died in New York City, many of them in preventable accidents where federal safety regulations were not adequately followed. Increasing communication between the two agencies will allow OSHA to direct their limited resources towards construction sites where DOB inspectors have already identified safety hazards or training failures. A failure of bureaucratic coordination is not an excuse we can give to the families of those injured or killed on unsafe construction sites. I want to thank the chair of the Buildings Committee and the City Council, Jumani Williams, as well as Speaker Melissa Mark-Viverito, Mayor de Blasio, and his administration for all of their assistance and support in getting this bill before the mayor today.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Just going to say a few words in Spanish to summarize all the different pieces of legislation that we have brought forward today, and then we'll be signing this last set of bills. Con las 14 leyes que estoy firmando, dueños de edificios deben informar a los inquilinos sobre las chinches. Los negocios pueden ser informados de quejas enviadas al 311. El Departamento de Transporte debe reportar las obras de pavimentos en las vías y estudiar mejores accesos a transporte en áreas necesitadas. Las familias de pre-kinder y recién nacidos deben ser informadas sobre planes de ahorro para la universidad. Más contratistas deben usar el sistema VENDEX y aumentamos la información que publicamos sobre nuestros contratos en Internet. Aumentamos los informes para mejorar la seguridad de los trabajadores de construcción. Los proyectos grandes en edificios con más de 3 pisos deben tener un experto que verifique su seguridad y mejoramos las normas y la seguridad en grúas. With that, we will now sign up this final set of legislation. Councilmember Lanceman, you are in first. Indeed. Great.
Down to the phones, please.
Congratulations. Councilmember Chin? How many would you like? I'm asking you. I don't know the answer. 5 it is. Well done. All right. Councilmember Kalos. How many would you like? 7. Now don't mess up the system here. Okay. All right, we're gonna get it together here. Now the phone goes off. It's all working out. You've got a piece of legislation coming to law. Look at the bright side. Yes. Okay, I think this is the last one. How many you got there?
That's the last
Okay. All right, and now, Councilmember Mazel. How many, sir? 5 it is. Everyone should get a mug, absolutely. Seems only fair. Congratulations. Thank you. Congratulations. And now, Shine retiring Councilmember Williams. Very shy.
5 and 5.
5 and 5. He's got 2.
2, 5 and 9. 5 and 9.
5 and 9. Okay. All these bills are now law.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Mike, got it? Just got it back there? Got it, John. Right. Group photo? Group photo. Right here. Thank you. Excellent. Good job, everyone, and this hearing is now adjourned.